Okay, so hopefully after checking it, you did really well, or maybe you guys haven't checked it yet. But I'm going to walk through a couple of the questions that I was finding and we were doing yesterday, and kind of show you just how we are able to use those approaches, the ability to eliminate distractors, the ability to use key terms, and to use our understanding of the eras of U.S. history to answer some of these questions. So I'm going to go through about 10 of these with you and kind of talk about what I can do, even if I didn't know the information very well, or if I felt like I didn't, the simple tips and tricks, and just kind of using the skills that we taught, how I think. So just thinking out loud for you guys. So here, number 2, how did the Pure Food and Drug Act change the way government regulated business? A, the government prevented businesses from raising prices due to research and development costs. Well, I mean, I guess it could be that, but it's not really doing anything to do with food or drugs. The government provides business. B, the government provides business incentives to companies in order to lower prices for the consumer. It doesn't say anything about food or drugs. C, the government establishes fair business practices to prevent manufacturers from forming monopolies. I think they're trying to make me think about the Sherman Antitrust Act there, and it doesn't say anything about food or drug. D, the government required businesses to indicate the ingredients in their products in order to protect the consumer. All right, ingredients. Yes, that's something to do with food. Also, if I'm thinking about it, I know that the FDA came out, and that means Food and Drug Administration, probably about the same time, Upton Sinclair. I'm going with D. Okay, the government required businesses to indicate the ingredients in their products. Knowing nothing else besides pure food and drug, and finding something that has to do with foods or drugs, the other 3 have nothing in them that has to do with that. But D does have ingredients, and it is the correct answer. So there's a really simple one to do. Let's do question 10. Go ahead and turn your packets to question 10 here. All right. In the late 1800s, why did the Great Plains region become closely associated with the populist movement? Oh, man, I remember Mr. Keneally was telling me something about the populists, William Jennings Bryan, but man, maybe you guys don't even think about William Jennings Bryan, but you're just going, it's something, I just don't quite remember. Well, okay, it's the late 1800s. Okay, the Great Plains, you got to be talking about the American West, okay? I got 1800s, Great Plains, so let's look. A large portion of the population was industrial workers. That has nothing to do with the Great Plains, so I'm going to cross that one off. Many cattle ranchers worked there. Yep, that fits. A large portion of the population was farmers. That works. Many immigrants settled there. Some did, but that doesn't probably fit. So I'm going to put it between B and C. So I have many cattle ranchers, or a large portion of the population was farmers. Well, now I just got to kind of take a shot in the dark. So I'm going to say C, just because it says population was farmers and it's the populist movement. And if you would have guessed that, it would have worked, because that is the correct answer. 10 is C. Okay, let's go to 14. Which of these statements best describes an obstacle to the assimilation of immigrant groups in the United States in the late 1800s? Okay, late 1800s again. I know that time period. Assimilation. What's that word? Oh, that's where they've got to put themselves together. I remember that picture of the Indian, and he had all of his Native American dress, and they sent him to the East Coast school, and he came back, and he didn't look like that at all anymore because he'd assimilated. Okay, I can remember that. And immigrants, they're people who moved here. Late 1800s immigrants, struggles for them to blend in with our society. A, anti-Semitism caused Jewish immigrants to settle in mostly rural areas. Well, I know Jewish immigrants moved here, but most of that came post-World War II, or at least the late 1900s in pogrom. So I'm going to cross that one off. B, Chinese immigrant workers working for lower wages caused resentment. It could be that, but I don't remember much about the Chinese. C, the war made United States citizens view German immigrants as an enemy combatants. Did we fight the Germans in the late 1800s? I don't think so. Cross C off. D, McCarthyism. McCarthyism's from the Cold War. That one doesn't fit. So the only one that I haven't crossed off is B, and I'm not really sure, but I know it's not the other 3, so I'm going to go ahead and say B. And you'd be correct. Okay? You don't have to know all of this, but you can look. That's the one that's going to be a struggle. Let's go to 17. Which of these changes influenced political participation in the 1970s? Ooh, okay, 1970s. What do I know? Vietnam, drugs. Mr. Keneally hasn't really taught it to us yet because we're not fully through it, but I'm going to see what I can do. Number 8, directly electing United States senators. Sure, I guess we do that. B, lowering the voting age to 18. Yeah, that happened about that time. C, granting women the right to vote. No, they already had the right to vote. That was the 19th Amendment. D, introducing national conventions. Well, it could be A or D. I don't know much about them, but I do remember talking about B, Oh, and that soldiers can go off and fight in the Vietnam War, but they couldn't vote yet. So we lowered the voting age to 18. B. 18. What was the purpose of the Federal Works Progress Administration, or the WPA? Oh man, I don't know much WPA. See what I can figure out here. A. To track cost overruns in state Medicare programs. Sure, I don't know. To monitor corporate compliance with the Federal Reserve regulations. To provide jobs to unemployed workers during the New Deal. The New Deal. Oh, that's FDR's thing. Alphabet soup. This could fit that. It's got a bunch of letters. D. To judge the benefits of military spending after the expensive Manhattan Project. Well, that's after World War II. That was built the atomic bomb. I don't know if that fits. Well, what else can I do? Works Progress Administration. Do any of these say any of those words? Track costs. A doesn't say Works Progress or Administration. Neither does B. C has workers. Well, that's works. And D doesn't have any of those. Well, C has works in it, and it sounds familiar. And the WPA was part. The alphabet soup was part of the New Deal. So I'll say C. Once again, correct. 20. What effect did the Immigration Act have of 1965? Mr. Keneally didn't teach us this. You're right. I didn't teach it to you. Okay. A. Florida's immigrant population declined dramatically. Sure, I don't know. B. Asians immigrated to the Northeast in great numbers. Okay, but I don't see how a law would make people move within the United States, so I'm going to cross that one off. C. Big cities in the Midwest lost a large percentage of their foreign-born population. Oh, that could happen. D. Southwestern borders, states such as Arizona, experienced massive population growth. Mr. Keneally hasn't talked about much. We talked a little bit about that stuff. I'm just going to go with what I know about modern American history, and we struggle with immigration, and lots of times we talk about Southwest and Mexican migration, so I'll say D. And you would be right. 21. How did government policies of the Gilded Age of the late 1800s promote industrialization? Okay, gilded, outwardly showy, inwardly corrupt, lots of money, but things weren't going good. Okay, how did they promote industrialization? So industrialization, that was things growing. Imperialism fueled steel production in the U.S. Okay, that could be it, steel production, but I don't know how imperialism would fuel it, but I'll keep it. New Deal policies, no, that's later. That's from the Great Depression. C. The Sherman Antitrust Act allowed for regulation of big business. Okay, that's about the time of monopolies, but that's regulation. That's not going to promote. That's going to hurt. So I'm going to cross that one off. D. Laissez-faire economic policies allowed private businesses to operate freely. It could be that one. So it's between A or D. Operating freely would promote industrialization when we talk about being. So I'm going to say D. 22. Which situation resulted from the OPEC oil embargo of 1973? Mr. Keneally, you didn't teach us about the OPEC oil embargo of 1973. Sorry, guys, we haven't gotten to it yet. But let's think. An oil embargo. Embargo. Well, that's when we don't trade with people, or people don't trade with us. So that's going to be a shortage of oil. So I can cross off the two surpluses. And then what do I know about economics? When there's a shortage of something, does that raise or lower the price? It raises the price. So it's A. 24. Which of these statements describes both the 15th Amendment and the Voting Rights Act of 1965? All right, they both have to do with voting. Suffrage. Okay, there's a synonym right there. Suffrage cannot be denied on the basis of race. That, I'm pretty sure that fits, but let's make sure. Anyone born in the U.S. is a citizen. No, that's the 14th. C. Congress has the power to collect taxes. I have no idea how that fits. D. Slavery cannot exist in the United States. Well, that's the 15th, but that has nothing to do with 1965. So, yep, suffrage. It's a synonym. It fits everything else. 30. Which of these factors led to the formation of a region called the Rust Belt during the late 20th century? Mr. Keneally, you didn't teach us about the Rust Belt. You're right. I didn't. But let's go. What do I know about the Rust Belt? Well, rust. What rust? Metal. Okay? That's all I know. It's going to be, it looks like by these four answers, it's going to be a region of the world, or the United States, that has metal. So a shrinking industrial base in the north. Sure, there's metal there. More agricultural jobs in the Mountain West. I guess they use metal and tools, but it's farming. I wouldn't think. I'd think they'd be called green something. So I'm going to cross that one off. C. A growing commercial base on the East Coast. Commercials, no. Commercial has nothing to do with it. D. More manufacturing jobs in the Great Plains. Okay, it could be that. Manufacturing, I think, of big metals, factories. Okay, I don't think there's a lot of businesses on the Great Plains, so it might not be D. A, shrinking industrial base in the north, Rust Belt. Well, if it's rusting, it's not being used. Of the two, shrinking industrial base, it means it's shrinking, so I'm going to guess A. Last one, guys. You're probably getting annoyed with me walking you through these, but I'm just trying to show you that you don't have to have a whole lot of knowledge. You just have to understand those eras and those key terms, and you don't have to memorize exact things like the Rust Belt and the Immigration Act of 1965. You just have to understand how America responded to these things and kind of have a feel for it. So last one, number 34. Which constitutional check did the Supreme Court use when declaring several New Deal programs unconstitutional? Okay, well, it's the Supreme Court. What's it called? What branch? The judicial branch. Which one says judicial? 34A. Guys, I know it sounds dumbly stupid, but you have learned so much. You guys have learned so much, and you guys have learned how to think, that if you slow yourselves down and just let yourself think about that stuff, and even go by a feel a little, okay, you've trained your brains, you're going to get there. Okay, don't let a word like Rust Belt or Immigration Act of 1965 get you all caught up, or a word that you feel like you should know, and it's just right on the edge of your understanding. Work yourself through the rest of the words, through the rest of the understanding. Okay, relax. You will do great on this. Hopefully you guys did good on this practice.